My name is Walter Granger. For 82 years, I've lived by one rule: never let anyone else wind your clock. But last week, I let my son hold the pen that could end my freedom. He brought me tea, smiled, and said, "Just sign here, Dad. We'll take care of everything." What he didn't know, by the time he brought those papers, I had already sold the house. The car, gone. Bank accounts, emptied. And what I left him instead is something you'll never forget. You see, when your own flesh and blood tries to bury you before you're dead, you don't argue. You disappear and let the truth slap them like a wave at high tide. Stick around. The twist you won't believe, it hits right around the 12-minute mark. Don't blink, because that's when everything falls apart. My name is Walter Granger. I'm 82 years old, and for most of my life, my world moved like the clocks I fixed, steady, precise, and never in a rush. After my stroke 2 years ago, I slowed down, but I didn't stop. Every morning at 6, I woke up. Breakfast at 6:30, then a walk to the post office and back, exactly 45 minutes round trip with my cane. Lunch at noon, workshop from 1 to 4. Just me, my tools, and a few old clocks that still needed my hands. It was a quiet life, a good life, predictable, and in many ways, that predictability kept me going. Then one Tuesday morning, everything changed. I had just finished adjusting the gearwork on a 1901 carriage clock when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window. A black SUV, clean, expensive, way too polished for a neighborhood like mine. And then I saw them. David, my son, 55 years old, and his wife, Sharon. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. The last time they came by, it was for my 81st birthday. They arrived late, left early, no hugs, no warmth. But now, there they were, unannounced, smiling. As I walked to the door with my cane, I already felt it. Something wasn't right. Sharon's eyes darted around like she was inspecting a crime scene. David clapped me on the back like he was greeting a stranger. Not a son seeing his father. They said they just wanted to visit, to spend time, maybe cook me dinner, check on me. But if you've lived long enough, you know when something's off, and something was very off. If you're still with me, you'll want to hear what I discovered that night. Because the clock was already ticking, and not in my favor. I invited them in, still trying to wrap my head around why they were here. David stepped in first, carrying that rehearsed smile he always wore when he wanted something. Sharon followed behind him, eyes scanning every inch of my home like she was taking inventory. The photos on the wall, the furniture, my tools, even the old cuckoo clock Eleanor and I bought in the 70s. She called it cozy, said it with that tone people use when they mean small, outdated, and ready to be replaced. I offered them tea. They insisted on making it themselves. That's when my gut started turning. My son, cooking in my kitchen? In over 30 years, he had never touched a spoon in this house. And now he was boiling water and asking where I kept the sugar. They asked about my health, my balance, how often I fall, whether the neighbors check in. Sharon leaned in, talking soft. Told me about a wonderful new place they had heard about. Said it was peaceful, clean, a safe option for someone my age. I nodded politely. I didn't want to start a fight, but inside, every word she said felt like sandpaper against my skin. They acted like they cared, like this visit was about me, but I've seen real care. I've seen it from my old neighbor Margaret, who brings pie every Sunday. From Frank, who fixes my mailbox without asking. From the clerk at the post office who walks slow so I can keep pace. This wasn't care. This was calculation, and as David helped Sharon carry the tea tray back to the living room, I made a quiet decision. I needed to watch, to listen, to figure out why they were really here, because this didn't feel like a family visit. It felt like a setup, and I wasn't about to be caught sleeping. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the visit felt too polished, too prepared. I kept hearing Sharon's voice, her hands moving through my kitchen cabinets like she already owned the place. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid. But then I heard voices faint from the kitchen. I got up, moved slow, careful not to creak the hallway floorboards. David was speaking first, his voice low, sharp. He said the house was sitting on a valuable lot, mentioned how much a local realtor had offered if it were put on the market. Sharon replied that they could get a good deal, especially if it was sold fast. Then I heard it. Quiet Haven. That was the name of the nursing home. Sharon said they had already spoken to the director. Told them I wasn't able to care for myself, that I was showing signs of decline, that I slurred my words. David agreed. Said all they needed now was my signature, and if they couldn't get that, they'd consider getting guardianship through the court. They were talking about me like I wasn't even there, like I was some business transaction they were trying to close before the end of the quarter. Then came the final blow. Sharon asked about my car, my old Chevy Impala, said it was a classic and could fetch a good price from a collector. I stood there in the hallway, gripping my cane like it was the only thing keeping me upright. So that was their plan. Get me into a care home, sell the house, sell the car, take everything I spent a lifetime building. I went back to bed, not out of fear, but to think. Because one thing David forgot is that I may move slow now. But I've spent a lifetime fixing broken things, and I was about to fix this. The next morning, they left with hugs and smiles like nothing happened. David promised they'd be back soon, said we'd talk more about my living situation. I smiled and nodded, just like he expected. But the moment their SUV disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my coat and crossed the street to Margaret's house. Margaret had lived across from me for over 20 years. She was the kind of neighbor who still brought pie on Sundays and kept your spare key without ever needing to be asked. She was taking out the trash when I walked up. I told her what I'd heard, every word, the plan to put me in a home, sell the house, sell the car, make me disappear. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't say much, just opened the door and said, "Come in." Inside, over hot coffee and a slice of blueberry pie, I told her everything again. Slower this time, making sure I hadn't imagined it. She didn't doubt a word, then she said something that changed everything. "You remember my daughter Janet? She works at Quiet Haven." I did remember. Janet had helped her move in after a short hospital stay last year. She worked in admissions, Margaret said. Knew all the paperwork, all the names. Margaret pulled out her phone and called her right then and there. Put her on speaker, told her what was going on. Janet listened quietly, then said she'd check the system. A few minutes passed, and then she confirmed it. Yes, David and Sharon had contacted Quiet Haven. Yes, they spoke with the director, and yes, a deposit had already been made. I wasn't imagining things, they were already moving pieces behind my back. Janet paused and said one more thing. They've scheduled a meeting for Monday, 5 days from now, to bring documents and start the process. 5 days, that was all I had. 5 days to protect my home, my freedom, my name, and I was going to use every hour. That afternoon, I walked 2 houses down to visit an old friend, Frank Delaney, 79, retired attorney. Still sharp as a tack and never missed his 5 a.m. coffee. When I told him what I'd heard and what Janet had confirmed, he didn't ask if I was sure. He asked, "You want me to find out why they're doing this?" I nodded. Frank had contacts, real estate agents, bankers, courthouse clerks, all the quiet places where stories like this get exposed. He made a few calls right there at the table. By evening, he called me back. What he found made my blood run cold. David wasn't just struggling, he was drowning. He'd taken out 3 large personal loans over the last 6 months, all of them overdue. High interest, bad creditors. One of them was a casino loan, not a bank, not a credit union, a loan shark operation out of state. And then came the part that hit hardest. Frank said, "You know that apartment you bought for him and Sharon when they got married?" Of course, I remembered. That 2-bedroom in Highland Park, I spent nearly all my savings to get it. A wedding gift, a start for their future. "He sold it," Frank said, "2 months ago, below market value, fast cash sale." So they had no home, no savings, and now no shame. That was why they came back. I wasn't a father to them anymore. I was a solution, a house to sell, a car to flip, an old man to put somewhere quiet. I sat in my workshop for hours after that, staring at a half-finished pocket watch. My hands didn't move, but my mind did. It was time to stop being sentimental. It was time to act. And if you've ever had to protect yourself from your own blood, you know, there's no hurt like that kind. That night, I didn't sleep. I made coffee at 2 a.m., sat at my kitchen table and stared at the photo of Eleanor holding baby David on our old porch. That house behind them, our house, wasn't just wood and nails. It was our life, and I wasn't about to let my own son steal it from me. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1, sell the house before he could touch it. I called Howard McCarthy, a longtime friend and retired realtor. We'd shared poker nights, camping trips, and grief after losing our wives. I trusted him. He didn't ask why, just said, "I'll bring the paperwork." Step 2, the car. My 1970 Chevy Impala was more than chrome and leather. It was history, but I'd rather see it in the hands of someone who valued it than watch Sharon list it for quick cash. Frank's nephew, Jared, was a car collector, made an offer on the spot. Step 3, cash. With Frank's help, I went to the bank and quietly closed all my accounts. $78,420 in bills, handed to me in a leather briefcase, no digital trail, no delay. Then came the part I looked forward to most, the inheritance. Not the kind they wanted. I pulled out a metal cookie tin from my pantry. Inside were David's old toys, wooden soldiers I carved by hand, his first model airplane, a battered teddy bear. I added a note. "This is all you ever truly owned." Then I folded up Monopoly money, wrapped it in real bank straps, and added another note. "Here's all the money you'll get from me." And last, I took my father's pocket watch, opened the back, and engraved 6 small words. "Time puts things in their place." That was my legacy. Not cash, not property, a lesson, and I prayed he'd read it. If you've ever had to leave a message someone didn't deserve, just in case they might need it one day, you understand exactly what I felt. 3 days later, David and Sharon came back. They brought lunch, flowers, and something new this time, a folder. David looked nervous but tried to act relaxed. "We've been thinking a lot, Dad," he said, "about your future, your safety, and we just want what's best." He opened the folder and laid out the documents. A glossy brochure for Quiet Haven, consent forms, medical release papers, power of attorney, all of it, lined up like pieces in a quiet ambush. I sat still for a moment. Then I said, "Let me get my glasses." I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward, squinted, and pretended to read slowly. David walked me through each form like a man explaining directions to a tourist. His voice was soft, too soft. And then he handed me the pen, the same pen I gave him for his college graduation. I remember the engraving. It said, "To my son, make good choices." Funny, I took the pen. My hand trembled slightly on purpose. I signed slowly, carefully, like an old man struggling to keep up, and just like that, it was done. David grinned. Sharon clapped her hands like we just closed on a beach house. They packed up the folder faster than I could blink. Said they'd take everything to the home the next morning, book the room, finalize the details. Sharon said, "Don't worry, Walter. We'll help you pack." I smiled and thanked them, offered pie. Inside, I was already 5 moves ahead because none of the power of attorney took effect until I officially moved into that nursing home. Until then, I was still the man in charge. And everything they thought they had, I'd already sold, moved, or locked away. They didn't know it yet, but they were holding nothing, just paper. If you've ever had someone think they outsmarted you when you were 10 steps ahead the whole time, you know the feeling. The next morning, they picked me up at 9 sharp. David carried my suitcase. Sharon held a clipboard and smiled like she had just won a prize. They chatted about how nice Quiet Haven was, how I'd make friends, how they even had bingo on Thursdays. I nodded politely. Inside, I was calm, focused. The ride took 40 minutes. I watched every turn, not because I didn't know the way, but to stay grounded, present. When we pulled up, Quiet Haven looked almost peaceful. Victorian design, painted shutters, trimmed hedges, but I saw past the fresh paint. I saw a cage. At the front desk, Janet stood in uniform, her smile professional. But when David turned away to check something on a form, she gave me a quick wink. I gave a slow nod. We were in motion. She showed me to my room, a small space, clean, plain, a bed, a chair, a window facing the parking lot. David placed my suitcase down and exhaled. "Well, Dad, this is it," Sharon added. "We'll come back tomorrow with your books, maybe your favorite chair. Make it feel like home." I thanked them. They hugged me, then they left. 10 minutes later, Brian appeared, Frank's nephew, the nurse on duty. He nodded toward the back hallway. "Service doors clear," he said. "Cars parked 2 lots over." I grabbed my bag. No goodbyes, no second thoughts, just quiet footsteps down a side corridor. We walked fast, steady. Outside, the cool air hit my face like freedom. We got in his old sedan and pulled away from Quiet Haven like it was just another building. By the time David and Sharon realized I was gone, I would be 2 counties away. They thought I was weak, easy to manage. But they forgot one thing. I built my life with my own 2 hands. And I would decide how it ends. If you've ever felt cornered but refused to fold, you'll understand what came next. That afternoon, while I was sipping black coffee on Frank's porch, David and Sharon returned to Quiet Haven. According to Brian, they walked in like royalty. Sharon headed straight for the front desk. David paced like he was in charge of something big. "We're here to see Walter Granger," he said. Janet looked up from her computer and smiled, cool as winter. "He's no longer here." David blinked. "What do you mean, no longer here?" "He checked himself out," she replied. "Voluntarily." Sharon started to panic. "You let him leave? You had our paperwork. We already made the deposit." Janet didn't flinch. "He signed a waiver yesterday. He has the legal right to refuse services." Then she handed them a small envelope. "My father asked me to give you this." Inside was the key to the safety deposit box. Nothing else. No explanation. No forwarding address, just a key. According to Brian, they didn't even finish the conversation. They bolted for the car, drove straight to the bank. But it was too late. Every account under my name was closed. every asset gone. And inside that deposit box, just the metal cookie tin, his childhood toys, Monopoly money wrapped in real bank tape, the broken teddy bear he used to sleep with, my engraved pocket watch, and a letter. I didn't write it to blame him. I wrote it to remind him. I told him what I knew about the debt, the lies, the betrayal. I didn't curse him. I didn't scream. I simply said the truth. That everything I once built for him was already gone, and everything he wanted, he'd have to earn for himself. Brian told me later that Sharon cried, David turned pale, couldn't speak, couldn't move, because for once they realized, you can't rob a man who already gave everything and took back only his dignity. Frank picked me up just after dawn the next day. We packed light, just the essentials, a few clothes, my tools, the photos I couldn't leave behind, and the letter I wrote to my son. We drove west. For hours we followed empty roads, passing fields, mountains, and finally, ocean. It had been 82 years and I had never seen the Pacific. We stopped at a small town called Neptune Cove. Quiet, wooden cabins, fishermen drinking coffee by the docks. No one asking questions. Frank's old college buddy ran a little place by the water. 2 bedrooms, a porch with a view of the waves. It was perfect. That night I sat on the sand barefoot, watching the sun drop behind the horizon. The tide rolled in soft, no noise except the wind, and for the first time in years, I felt still, not stuck, still, like a man no longer running from something. Frank came down and handed me a glass of whiskey. To your second act, he said. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. The next morning, Brian texted Frank. He had recorded David's reaction at the bank, sent it to us. In the video, David stood frozen, the tin box in his hands. Sharon sobbing, the letter unread but heavy in his grip. I didn't feel joy watching it, only peace. Because I hadn't destroyed my son, I'd given him a mirror. What he did with it was his choice. As for me, I was home. Not the house I built with my hands, that was gone, but the one I carried inside. If you've ever had to start over late in life, not out of desire but out of necessity, you know this kind of peace doesn't come easy. But when it does, you hold on to it and never let go. Some people think revenge is loud, screaming, slamming doors, burning bridges, but real revenge, the kind that lasts, is quiet. It's walking away with your dignity intact. It's letting the people who tried to bury you realize you were never under their thumb to begin with. I didn't leave to punish my son. I left to protect what was left of me. My peace, my time, my right to choose how my final chapter would be written. In the end, David didn't lose because I fought back. He lost because he forgot who raised him, who gave him everything he ever had. And when you forget the hands that built your foundation, don't be surprised when the house falls apart. Now I live by the ocean. I wake up to the sound of waves, not demands, no clocks ticking in my ear, no shadows at my door, just the wind, the water, and the quiet knowing that I stood up when it mattered most. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you're there right now. So let me ask you something. What would you do to protect your peace? Let me know in the comments. You're not alone.